So I understand why HR wants me to coach, because that's going to be good for engagement. And I understand why the person who I'm leading would like to be coached, because they'll get more attention and more focus, and they'll become more effective and more efficient and have more impact and feel better about themselves. And I understand why the organization wants me to coach, because they want people to be more engaged and they want people to be more productive, so they win. But what's in it for me? It's good for everybody else, but for me, it's just another burden. And so we go, but look, if you get this coaching thing down, you actually get to work less hard, but have more impact in the work that you do. And that's the kind of what's in it for me piece. And I think whenever you're trying to figure out change, if you're not really clear about the upside being better than the downside, you're always up against it. That was a very long answer. I can't even remember what the question was, Dave, but how did that land for you?
Yeah. Now, we'll play it back later and figure out what the question was. No, that was exactly right, because what you're talking about there was, the whole idea of, you said, work less hard. And I love that in a lot of the taglines I've seen, because that is what we're trying to do. It's not get less done. It is not to be lazy. It's not to cut corners, but it's going to feel like it. When you're used to being, I was taught that, okay, when you manage and you run a project, get the most out of your people. You got to be there and, guide, is what you hear, which is the nicer way of saying controlling and pointing out. Right. But fortunately, early in my career, I had a few really good mentors who were late in their career, and they were actually coaching me in hindsight.
Brilliant.
No one told them to coach me. I think the fact that they had actually put in their 35 years and decided to, at the time I was working outside in construction, they wanted to go back to kind of having fun again. So every day I got coached, and I didn't realize this for almost 15 or 20 years. That's what was. I know they were helping, and I know they were unbelievable, but I didn't realize that that was true coaching. And they got more done with the rest of us on that crew because nobody felt like there was burnout. They could trust us with everything, and they could step in and ask how things are going, and we were open because we were empowered to do our jobs. And when we made mistakes, they pointed it out, but it was always moving forward because, again, they didn't want the job back when we made mistakes. They just wanted it back on track. So it was ours the whole way. And I think that this is a good point to talk about the book now, The Coaching Habit, because I've got it here holding my hands, because I will say the first couple times I read it, I listened to it.
Cool.
Because I love audiobooks. It's just a way for me, and I know where I was. We were in Cape Cod, and I was listening to this saying, wow, this is painfully simple and effective. And listening to it. And I remember reading the article about how you wrote this was supposed to be the best leadership, coaching book out there. It was going to be different in how it looked, but all I had was the audio version, and I've got in my hand right here the book itself. And if this is the kind of book I love, because as I just flick the pages past me, there is a lot of white space with a lot of big words. That is the thing that matters, and there are sections to work in. And I don't mean 5 worksheets; I mean 5 lines. And I'm just going to tell people the way this book is structured. It says things such as, when you feel this or hear this, instead do this. And I'm going to turn to you and how the way this book was delivered, because whatever you do, if you're not a business person, but it's your household, your classroom, your sports team, whatever it is, this really is going to make you feel like you're cheating, that your day is going too well for the amount of work you're putting in compared to what you used to do.
That's nice. That's a nice endorsement. Thank you. I appreciate that. Look, I'm going to say one thing about your comments about the design of the book, because I love that you're picking up on that, and that your experience is pleasurable as you flick through that book. But it connects back to just what we were saying before, which is, I went, okay, what stops people reading books? Because books, people buy books but never quite get to them. People don't buy books. And so I came up with this idea in mind going, okay, this book is written for a woman mid-level manager who's in an airport, walks into the bookstore in the airport, picks up the book, and I want her to go, this looks interesting. I could read this, and it doesn't look too long. Because I thought to myself, in my own experience, most business books are too long. Mm-hmm. They're filled with fluff. You know, if I read one more story about Southwest Airlines, I'm going to kill myself. Their design is kind of like a dense textbook. So that, you pick it up and you're like, there's just too many words in this book. And there's not a sense of space and openness. And I was like, okay, get to the heart of what the resistance is and try and find ways to overcome that resistance. So what you're pointing to in the design was exactly what we were hoping for. And I know you started with the audiobook, so you don't get the benefit of the design. But when we picked the guy who read the audiobook, we were looking for somebody who had a kind of lightness and playfulness to his voice as well. So people hopefully got this, a kind of related brand experience, I guess.
Oh, and he did. That was the thing, that I was literally walking on the beach, listening to the headphones while the girls were, they were getting their suntan, wanting Dad to go elsewhere, and I did. And
right.
It was not me working on vacation. It was listening to it, and again, the way the book is, it has all these pauses for you to interact as you can just open to a chapter and just go into it. But even the audio really was inviting that way. So that's the other thing I really wanted to get to and let people know that this was just so well conceived, like I say, from all directions, that we're not used to that, because business books are usually in hindsight, that this is what we've seen. Someone has had great results for 20 years, so we think this is what they did and you should do.
Right.
It's historical. And this is how you take your life forward and working with other people, and it's got flexibility. Like the 7 questions that are in here to ask. I'm going to tell you the one I like the most, so you don't pick it. But,
oh, good. Which one do you like the most?
It's the awe question, AWE, and what
Perfect.
else? And I'll be honest, that was the one thing that just leaped into my head. And as soon as I came back from vacation, I'm just going to use this one and see what happens. It changed everything the way it did.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, for people listening in,
yes, explain what that is. Yes.
Yeah, so we call it the AWE question because it's an acronym for "and what else." And we say this is the best coaching question in the world, and the fact that the acronym is AW is just perfect. It's literally an awesome question. Mm-hmm. But the key insight is the person's first answer is never their best answer. It's almost never their only answer. And when we talk about helping people be more coach-like, here's what we actually mean. It's a behavior change, and it's simple, but it's difficult. The behavior change is, can you stay curious a little bit longer? Can you rush to action and advice giving just a little bit more slowly? Because it turns out almost all of us are advice-giving maniacs. I mean, honestly, we just love it. We love to give people advice. We love to tell people what to do. And it comes from a good heart. It's because we're trying to be helpful. It also comes from habit, because we spend a lifetime being rewarded for the person to having the answer. And it also more subtly and more insidiously, I think, comes from the fact that when you're the person giving advice, you've kind of got control, you've kind of got the status in the conversation. So it's a controlling move as well. So what we're trying to do is have people slow down the rush to action and advice giving by being more curious. And so when you ask a question, any question, but take one from the book. So what's the real challenge here for you? People will have an answer. But then instead of being triggered to leap in and fix things and solve things and give ideas and take responsibility for it, you nod your head and go, that's a great answer. And what else? What else is a real challenge here for you? And they're going to go, actually, and they'll give you something else. And you're like, I love it. And then you go, this is brilliant. What else? What else is a challenge here for you? And they're like, oh. And they'll give you a third thing. And then you're like, this is wonderful. And if you want to, you can go, is there anything else here? I mean, this is great. And they're like, actually, yes. Here's the fourth thing that's a real challenge for me. And you're like, brilliant. So you've got all these things that are real challenges for you. If If you had to pick one, what's the real challenge here for you? And boom, you're at a deeper level of a conversation with this person. And all you've done is use two questions and stayed enthusiastic and curious. And you haven't, and I'm doing air quotes here now, Dave, you haven't added value by leaping in with your thoughts, your opinions, your solution. Because I can guarantee you almost all the time, if you start fixing the first thing that shows up, you're almost certainly fixing the wrong problem. And then when you add to that your advice actually isn't as good as you think it is, you're now probably offering up slightly crappy advice to solve the wrong problem. And that is not a strong stance for anybody.
No, and that's where we're chasing symptoms and not the real disease,
right,
if you will. Because that's the easiest thing to see. So with that now, that was number 2 of the questions asked. Do you have another one that we could get into here that you find to be
Well, honestly, I love all of these, so I'm not a good person to ask. So you picked, and what else? What's another question that you'd pick as one that kind of resonated or seems to have worked for you?
Well, why don't we, there's the lazy question too, because that was your triangle was part of that, I believe, in the book as well.
That's right.
Yeah, let's
right.
Let's get into that one, the lazy question.
Sure. So the lazy question, and this will sound counterintuitive when you hear what the lazy question is, but the lazy question is exactly that chapter where we taught the drama triangle. And it's about how do you stop leaping in and becoming the rescuer. Because remember, that's the role that most people self-identified with most often. And so the lazy question is, how can I help? Or a blunter version of it is, what do you want from me? And I know the people listening in going, wait, how is, what do you want? No, how is, sorry, the lazy, I got confused in my own questions. The lazy question is, how can I help? People listening to that will go, well, honestly, how can I help does not sound like a lazy question. It sounds like what you're asking for is a bunch of work to kind of add to your already big pile of work. But here's my take on it. And I love that you made the connection for all of us to the drama triangle, because what normally happens to people who are rescuers, and most people really recognize that kind of rescuer role, is when somebody comes in and goes, hey, Michael, blah, 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 all these little triggers happen for you, and you're like, I'm going to leap in and be helpful and offer suggestions and fix it and solve it for them. And actually, most of the time, you don't know what's really required. So you're trying to slow down this rush to action and advice giving. So when somebody comes in and goes, hey, Michael, how do I do this? Or Michael, what's going on with this? Calming your advice monster down, this is what we call it, the advice monster. You go, okay, I understand everything that's going on. There's a lot going on. And I can feel all these things I want to do to help you, but let me check. How can I help? Or what exactly do you want from me here? And what you're going to get is a kind of a more explicit, more direct request for something. Sometimes they're going to say, oh, I don't want anything. I just wanted to tell you what was going on. In which case you go, that's awesome. Now get out of my office. I've got stuff to do. Sometimes they'll go, oh, yeah, I'd like you to take this all on and solve it for me. In which case you go, well, that's funny. I can't do that because this is your job and your responsibility. But I could do this instead. So you get to say yes, or you get to say no, or you get to say maybe to whatever request is being made. But you're doing two things. You're making them make a clear request, and then you're setting yourself up so that you understand what's actually being asked of you, and you understand that you have a choice in how to respond to that request.
And it is not saying go away and go figure it out yourself, the lazy part. Yeah, I mean, it's lazy in that it forces them to bring the clarity, whereas a lot of times we'll go back and forth, which is, okay, here's what I need you to do. And they'll come back and say, well, that's fine, but what? And we're jousting, and worse if it's by email. Because God help us, how many of those, they go back and forth, and we're responding while somebody's sending a second response. So that actually, now I come to think of that, was the other one that I started using immediately.
That's great.
And it is one where in my day job, I work on